This week on Home by Novogratz. In this week's episode, Bob and Courtney totally cop out and do a lame-o show where they don't design anyone's apartment or house, but take a camera crew up to Great Barrington to their country home and spiff it up for a barbecue. They tell us that the concept that they're going for is bohemian chic, and the ideas that they come up with is putting a new awning over the deck and planting some new petunias out front in the planters. Thank God for design professionals and their TV shows, because the average person never would have came up with those ideas. They replaced some of the kids' swings out in the big tree in the backyard with some spray-painted tire swings. And tip number 1 is to use motorcycle tires because they're thinner and hip-looking. In tip number 2, Bob spray paints his grungy old garden gnome so that it looks fresher. Bet you couldn't have thought of that on your own. In preparation for the barbecue, Courtney hangs some striped curtains in the front entryway. And tip number 3 is that this is a less expensive way to update the look of the house. The house is basically white with yellow shutters. And they try to jazz up the barbecue deck area with an awning, and they paint a yellow horizontal stripe on the wall of the house above the barbecue grill. And tip number 4 is to use only one accent color to unify the whole thing. I guess there's some suburb somewhere where there's like 4, 5, 6 colors on a house, but most houses I've ever seen usually have one accent color. So with the workmen working, they head off to shopping because that's what Bob and Courtney do. They do it every show. So they go off to Hudson, New York, and they go vintage shopping, which is what they like to do. And tip number 5 is that you should get to know the owners of these antique shops, because then if you're a regular customer and they know you, they'll give you discounts. In fact, tip number 6 is to ask for 15 to 20% off on anything vintage. They buy a nice secondhand mirror that they hang over the barbecue, which I guess they must have took in before Hurricane Irene. They buy a bunch of vintage-looking candelabras that they hang from the trees out in the yard, because they have this whole concept of bringing outdoors in, except for, that pesky weather thing. But whatever. Tip number 7 is to seal the edge of the mirror before you leave it out in the rain. You think? And last but not least, they take an unused room over their garage and turn it into an art room for their kids. They let the kids paint all over the walls, and tip number 7 is that you can always just paint over the paint. Seriously? So they throw the barbecue, and their friends love the new look, and I hope that the HGTV camera crew at least got a good burger out of the deal, because this episode was like...